Welcome to episode 3 of the Inside Real Estate Podcast. Today we have on Brady Carroll, and we're going to pick his brain a little bit, and hopefully you guys will be able to take something and apply it to what you're doing. All right, so Brady, you are with VRA Realty, and you're on the commercial end of things, right?
Yes.
Absolutely, cool. So just take a few minutes and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. How I got into commercial real estate?
No. Just tell us a little bit about like you personally, like, hey, your dad, you're an athlete, any type of thing.
Yeah, sure. Grew up in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Actually born in Chestertown, Maryland. Moved to Westchester when I was 2. Okay. So my family's still on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay. Mm-hmm. But grew up in Westchester. Live here with my wife and 4 children now. They're 11, 9, 8, and 6, so we're pretty busy, have our hands full. Yeah. And I've been selling commercial real estate and investing in commercial real estate for about 12 years now. Cool. And recently joined VRA.
Awesome.
Just a few months ago, earlier this summer.
So far, so good?
Yeah, going great.
Awesome.
Amazing team here.
How did you get into real estate and why commercial?
It's a great question. So I had a lot of different jobs growing up through my teens and 20s, and probably my favorite job was an iron worker. And I did that for a few years until one day I had an accident, fell off the perimeter of a building, and I was actually impaled. And it was a pretty rough accident that ultimately caused me to have to leave the industry. I just knew that it wasn't sustainable for forever. Yeah. And I remember being up on the iron one day, and to this day, I don't know if it was the developer or if it was a broker or whoever, but he rolled up in a black S-Class Benz with a suit. And I just remember thinking that I can't do this forever. I got to be that guy one day. Yeah. So shortly after that, I called a friend who was doing really well selling commercial real estate. We were in our mid-20s at this point, and I called him to see if he had any opportunity for me. At the time, it wasn't the right time for him to take me on. But shortly after that, he did give me a call one day and said, let's bring you in and let's get you started. And so I just, knew that I wanted to sell these buildings that I used to build, office buildings and warehouses and schools and hospitals. And so that's how I got started. It was a friend of mine was doing very well, and I just thought that it was a more sustainable industry for me, and awesome. Yeah, that's how I got started.
How did your first deal go? How did that come about, and how did all that go?
So I worked for him for 9 months before even getting licensed, and thought that I was just doing the grunt work of the cold calls and the letters and building the database and doing the research and analysis. And eventually, when I got my license, the first deal that I did was a 6-unit apartment building in Phoenixville. Okay. And I remember it being pretty smooth. And I enjoyed it. And, I didn't, I only made, I think, $24,000 my first year ever in the industry. And, thankfully it went up from there. Yeah. But, I got my first deal just from cold calling. This person I actually sent a letter to, and he called me on a letter.
I know that a lot's been going on in the last handful of years. How has the industry evolved since you've been in the business? From where you started with that first deal to, what's going on in commercial now? Yeah.
So one of the biggest eye openers was I just recently, so every year we go over, track where we sourced our deals from. And recently I was just going over where we came about some of our first apartment buildings that we listed and sold. And one of the biggest eye openers was, I have the addresses of the property, obviously, the clients and everything, but also the price and the cap rates and the price per unit for all these properties. And the cap rates when I was selling these apartment buildings 11 years ago or so, I was surprised that they were 9 caps and even 10 caps and even 11 caps in Philly. And the biggest difference is that over the next decade, those cap rates compressed dramatically from even double digits down to 4 and 5% cap rates on average. And that's changed a little bit since interest rates have gone up in the last year.
Yeah.
But the pricing went through the roof and those cap rates compressed. That was probably the biggest evolution that I saw.
How much did COVID change the industry with related to commercial?
Well, the industry as a whole, it's the biggest impact is office, obviously.
Okay.
For
the better, for the worse, what are you seeing?
For the much worse. Unfortunately, for people who invest in office buildings. Now, not to say that there's not solid performing office buildings. Of course, there's a flight to quality for amenities and really, high standard of office buildings. For example, there's almost 100 million square feet of vacant office buildings in Manhattan alone. And that's a trend that is across the country because the pandemic specifically exposed the reality that people can work virtually because of technology this way. They can work remotely more than they ever could before. Now, there's a lot of people, especially REITs and other people who are heavy investors in office that say that that's bad for the industry. And they would see higher production with their people in the office. But the reality is people have realized that they can even be more productive without their commute, whether they're, an hour into the city, they can just work from home, or they've just fled from these cities and working remotely. So office has had the largest impact, and to be honest, it doesn't look like it'll ever be the same as it was pre-pandemic. Not to say that all these office buildings are going to stay vacant for forever, because you can reposition them and a lot of people redevelop them into apartments or find other uses for them. So are you seeing those as,
those different use cases now, like I guess repurposing, are you seeing that as, new opportunities created by what happened during COVID with now people aren't coming back in the office as much?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, especially with office.
Yeah. What about commercial multifamily? Like, are you seeing like a rise in people going after that?
That's always been very strong.
Yeah.
And since the pandemic, it has increased. It's until the interest rates went up last year.
Yeah.
So, it's a give and a take. I wouldn't say that that's directly related to the pandemic. The pandemic has made development tougher because of supply chain issues and cost of construction and labor going up. And so even though there's plenty of apartments being developed in our market and across the country, it's a lot of these projects have been forced to slow down because of the cost of capital and because of just increased construction costs due to the pandemic, and that hasn't really restabilized yet. That being said, with inflation and all the money that they printed during the pandemic, it's caused people to not have as much money to be able to afford housing.
Right.
And that the residential housing market has continued to increase.
Especially where we live too.
Yeah, especially
it's nuts.
Yeah, in places like here. So that has forced people to be more long-term renters.
Right. That's what I was getting at.
There's been a lot of development and even overdevelopment of multifamily across a lot of markets. So these landlords have had to offer concessions, and there was a lot of pain for a lot of landlords during the whole 2020 pandemic, when people were getting stimulus checks and, you weren't allowed to evict people. And that was a mess for a while.
Sure. So I do a lot of real estate marketing. So I work with a lot of agents working, to market their properties for sale, mostly in the residential area. Occasionally we get some people doing, commercial properties. How do people on the commercial end of things market their properties? Like, what do you do to market your properties?
Yeah,
because they're not doing the same. They're not doing the same virtual tours and videos. I mean, some people are, but nowhere near. It's not the standard the way it is in residential.
You're right. It's not the standard. We do offer Matterports for most of our listings, if not all. And virtual tours are great as, the Matterport way. But you're right. It's a different approach. A lot of it is my core business has been mostly investment properties, which is also a little bit different from a user owner commercial property, which I'll talk about a little bit too. On the investment side, the majority of the business, maybe not the majority, but a good amount of the business has been very different than your residential marketing and sales, because a lot of it's off market and it's all about securing the deal, getting a listing on market or off market, just getting a commission agreement with a seller and sharing that listing, sharing that opportunity within your database and with your pool of investors who you've built a relationship with over the years.
And I'm sure that increases your value to your clients as well.
Yeah. So we do, it all depends, and we custom tailor the approach to each seller. Some seller says, prefers to have full market exposure, and then you list it on all the different national sites like CoStar and LoopNet and Corexy and even the MLS sometimes if they want that as well.
So even putting it on the websites isn't like a guarantee the way every residential home goes on the MLS.
No, we rarely put anything on the MLS.
Right. But what I'm saying is like the Corexys and the LoopNets and all those, it's not like automatic when you're dealing with commercial that they're going to be on those sites.
No, more times than not, it doesn't go there. Yeah, because it's more of a confidential business, I believe. You don't need to go out to the masses and the everyday consumer in order to sell the product, especially if you've underwritten it properly and it's a seller who's, willing to sell at a fair market value, or even, buyers who are able to stretch and make a good deal for both sides. A lot of it is done just between principals, and the broker is in the middle, myself and my team and, other brokers out there, just to connect the people.
With that said, so what do I do if you have your listings or in your properties you're selling and another agent will have theirs, right? If I'm looking to invest in something, like what should be my approach? Because if you're telling me stuff's not on LoopNet and Corexy all the time, so do I just need to contact every broker out there if I'm like hunting around, what should be my approach as an investor looking for opportunities?
That's not a bad idea. Wouldn't discourage anyone from ever doing that.
Definitely call you though.
Yeah, definitely call me. We've done okay over the years.
Yeah.
We've sold over $500 million worth of investment properties in commercial real estate. So, that's just a testament to putting in the work and bringing people opportunities that have made them money and been successful projects, so that, there's more of it there. So, developing relationships with brokers is absolutely a good approach. They are the people who are out there finding the deals and speaking with the owners. And, that's really the greatest value that the brokers bring.
So having sold $500 million, what's your most notable or the transaction you're most proud of? You don't have to give specifics, but can you give us a little idea of what it might have been?
Transaction I'd be most proud of. You know what? I like to, it's all about problem solving, right? It's all about catering to the client and bringing value to their specific goals and needs at that time. And one that's been one of my favorite of all times, and it's because it worked out really well for everyone involved, and also because built great relationships along the way. There was an investor who sold a large apartment building in Manhattan for, let's just say it was between a 2 and a 3 cap. It was about a 2.5% cap rate, which is unheard of down in our neck of the woods in the Mid-Atlantic region.
Okay.
And so just using rough numbers, the property was netting him about $250,000 a year. Wow. And so he sold that, and without any extra money out of his pocket, just used those funds to 1031 exchange and leverage those funds into a property, which was a grocery anchored shopping center in the Mid-Atlantic region. And that ended up netting him $750,000 a year. So he just used the fundamentals of commercial real estate and leverage to triple his income, passive income, by the way, just from leveraging the assets and through a 1031 exchange. So that was a really good success story, and we've been friends ever since. And
I bet you are.
Yeah, and we built from there. I mean, that was just the first of many that we did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So do you find that you create relationships like that with a lot of your clients? As you're helping them create success, these relationships just blossom.
Yeah. The majority of my business is referral based. And so there's usually a mutual connection to start anyway. So there's a little trust already.
Okay.
But my main goal is to help people. So, just building the relationships is the fun.
No, I think that there's some, with what you just said, like your main goal is to help people. And I know everybody wants to make money, but how important is it to approach it with that mindset to actually being able to, get to this success? Does coming to it like, hey, I'm going to do something for you first, does that translate into more success than if you came in from like, hey, I just want to get paid?
Yeah, no, thankfully I've always had that mindset anyway. Mm-hmm. It's just, I've always believed that you have to bring someone value and then the money will follow that.
What's your focus right now for 2024? What is Brady Carroll focusing on this year?
We're focusing on, number one, acquiring deals.
Okay.
With some friends and partners. Who were anticipating interest rates to come down a little bit and some more deals to pencil out, mm-hmm. along with a lot of loans coming due this year that will be problematic for the investors because property values. So we're talking about multifamily right now for the most part. I wouldn't say that the values are necessarily going to plummet or anything, but the interest rate being likely double or significantly higher than it was is mm-hmm. going to obviously eat into that cash flow, and it's going to be a completely different deal in underwriting. So we see them actually working this year and trying to find those opportunities. Besides that, we're always looking to help other people broker deals by listing any kind of property that they have, whether it's the property that their business is in, or it's an investment property that they've had for a short period or a long period of time. We're really both approaches simultaneously.
Then this next part that I want to get into, I want to talk about, or have you talk about some things that you do outside of business, maybe in your personal life, could be fitness, things you're doing with your, time you're spending with your family, books you're reading. What are you doing outside of, the day-to-day work stuff that helps you with your business?
It's a great question, especially this year, right? 2023 was the toughest year that I've ever experienced in my 12 years in the industry. And that goes for a lot of people. There's plenty of deals getting done, but it's significantly lower than it has been historically. Mm-hmm. Some reports are, 80 to 90% down year over year as far as transaction volume and income and, depending on who's measuring. So it was a really tough year. And in that situation, in order to always keep the energy high, right? We're entrepreneurs. We're self-employed. Sure. We're our own business owners.
Not everybody gets that mindset.
We only eat what we kill. We do not get paid until we close the deal. And so if you are we've been frustrated with a lot of deals. Just, I've had some of the greatest listings that I've ever had in the last year or so. It's just that, the banks aren't willing to finance them, or they don't pencil out because interest rates are higher, and they just don't work right now, for a lot of different reasons, mostly fundamentals of the industry. But that said, in order to keep your energy high, in order to always be optimistic, I focus on what I can control. And that's been definitely health and fitness, and that's helped me get through and stay positive. I've been reading every day, read more books this year than I have in the last couple of years, maybe because I was so busy because it was a hot market, but really lack of discipline. So that was just one way that I've been working out consistently, make sure that I have a healthy diet, good sleep. And that's just a way to, balance out the negative from the business side of it.
So did I see you're doing the 75 hard thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. How's that going?
Yeah.
How hard is it?
So far, thank God, not hard at all.
Yeah.
I haven't been this energized since I was a kid. Probably I'm in day 16 because I started.
It's big. It's just it's just really creating the discipline, right? Isn't that the biggest thing with that?
Yeah. So working out was easy for me because I've pretty much consistently worked out for 25 years now, since I was a teenager. The reading and the sleep was a big change for me. So I'm going to bed earlier, and I'm making sure that I read every day.
What books are you reading? Anything good right now?
The first book that I finished this month was called Living Fearlessly. It was actually a gift given to me by a friend, Rob Caldwell. It's a really good book. Just it was more like a pamphlet than a book.
Yeah.
I'm starting off slow.
Yeah, right.
And
ramping up.
I'm reading a few more right now.
Cool. For somebody that's just getting started who maybe has, had that, maybe didn't, get impaled, but maybe had that, just that eye-opening experience, hey, I want to do that. And they're thinking about getting into commercial real estate. What are some things you would tell them as far as how to go about breaking into the industry? If they're just getting going.
Yeah, well, it's more sales than anything, right? It's sales-based business. It's sales and marketing. It's relationship-based. If someone was looking to get into it, I would say that it's a very attractive industry because there's no ceiling to how much income you can make. There's absolutely no limit. And because it's higher price points, it's typically higher commissions. And while you do put in more time than a lot of other sales positions, the reward is greater for, a bigger, commission or income on the back end once you complete the assignment. So anyone getting into it, I would say you have to prepare for 6 months, I would say at least. And that was my mindset going in, to have a reserve just to be able to pay my bills and not expect to make $1 for at least 6 months. Yeah. And for me, it was a little bit longer than that because I didn't even get licensed at first. And I was working other jobs like delivering pizzas and working construction jobs on the weekends and things like that just to pay the bills at the time. But, training and mentorship is huge in this industry because there's a lot to learn. And 12 years into it, I still learn every day. And sometimes I look clueless, and there's not a lot of, there probably is, but most jobs that you might, be selling or taking on, 12 years in, you may have thought that you have mastered it by now, and there's not a whole lot more to learn, but there's just so much more involved with a commercial real estate transaction than, say, a residential transaction, that there's a lot more training. And so I would say work under someone with experience is a huge part of it.
Okay.
Because that's going to be your best training.
Yep.
It's going to be your best.
And it will probably give you good exposure to how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, you really have to do that for your first few. I would recommend working alongside someone else who's done it before, who has the experience, who can, kind of walk you through the process, and sit next to them as they have the conversations and meet the people. And
I want to get into it. I just got my license, and now I'm looking where to put my license. Is there a pro or con to going with a brokerage that does both residential and commercial versus one that just focuses in commercial? Is there benefits to doing that?
So it's all going to be based on your personality. There's really, I wouldn't categorize it that way. I'd categorize it, are you going to be a more corporate broker, or you're going to be a more mom and pop, not casual, but a more entrepreneurial broker. So the largest and most successful firms in our country, but globally really, are very much more corporate culture. And that fits a lot of people's personalities better than, say, my approach, which has been very entrepreneurial. I started off with a boutique outfit of 5 agents in an office in Newtown Square. And then I spent 10 years with KW Commercial, which is Keller Williams is obviously a residential brokerage, and KW Commercial is the commercial arm of that. But it's still the same model where there's no manager, there's no restrictions on what you can sell and where you can sell. And we pick and choose the deals and the clients and the geography and everything. And so that's always fit my personality better. So it's really up to that individual. Would you rather have more structure and be more managed by someone? You're going to get more amenities. You might have more support, and you might have more larger opportunities given to you that way, but there's a give and take because your split's probably going to be higher. So, working the same amount of time on the deal, you might end up netting less commission than if you're with a brokerage like I've been with, that's more entrepreneurial, and you just keep more of your share of the commission.
And you can give you a little more freedom to choose your path.
Yeah. But you have to build it on your own.
Right.
So
you can't forget that part.
Yeah. So some people are more of a salesperson, and not saying that they're not a leader, because you have to be a leader to be successful in this business. But, they'd like to work more in that corporate environment. Whereas someone like myself, I've just been preferred to be more on my own and build it and do it my own way.
Are you a solo guy, or do you have a team? What's your situation right now?
I have had, I've been both. When we joined KW Commercial, I had a team of 15 agents in Wilmington with full-time admin and marketing, and that was a lot of fun. And we got licensed in every surrounding state: Delaware, Maryland, Jersey, New York. So we expanded geographically, and we had offices all over the region, and that was a lot of fun. And not as profitable as when we've dialed it down to 3 or 4 agents. So, right now it's me and a junior broker and admin, and that's a pretty good, solid way to approach it. The most successful agents that I've observed usually have 2 or 3 guys and an admin and marketing. It's kind of like a nice sweet spot.
So you build like system people around you, and then...
Yeah, but there's a lot of guys who, continue to build and grow, and they do very well by growing a team of 10 or more.
Okay.
And then there's other offices where different teams are specifically dealing with different asset classes. Yep. So, they kind of share trade and, things like that, but they're more managed on what they're able to do.
Now, let me ask you this. So with residential agents, which I have more experience with, they have crazy schedules, like are answering their phones at all time of basically they're on 24/7 if they have to be the good ones. Right. But is it the same thing with commercial? What's your day-to-day schedule?
Yeah, 100%.
You're picking up the phone whenever.
Yeah, it's 18 hours a day. You got to be ready to go.
Hear that?
There's no change. I mean, the major difference, one of the differences why I got into commercial is because I got married the year that I started in the business and got licensed, and I knew that we wanted a family and children, and weekends were big for me. Holidays were non-negotiable for me to be able to spend weekends as much as possible, and especially holidays with my family and my children. So The residential side, you're usually working more Saturdays and Sundays, open houses, showings. There's a lot more traffic and business being done on the weekends as opposed to commercial where it's more Monday through Friday. We still work every Saturday and Sunday, but it's less intense than it is on the residential side. You always have to I answer emails and texts and calls every day of the week.
Yep. That I'm sure is a factor for a lot of people. So that's good to know. How much more tight do you have to be with stuff? Like, I mean, because you're dealing with big money sometimes. And I think you're also not dealing with average Joe public, right? So you're dealing with businessmen that are probably more on their stuff than a lot of homeowners are in some cases. So how much more stress and how much more do you have to be on top of everything in commercial?
I'm not going to say that you have to be any more on top because in residential, it's very critical for everything to still be done correctly, especially since it's an everyday consumer and they don't have maybe the sophistication of the industry and business side. So they're much more reliant on the agents and the brokerage doing everything correctly for them. That being said, typically just because of price points, there's a lot more at stake because there's a lot more money involved for the most part. We have attorneys involved on most deals, especially any sizable deal over $1 million. So, there is some security there. And you do have to be tight with everything. I mean, the bank's underwriting is very much black and white. I would say a little bit more than it would be in residential as far as appraisals and underwriting goes.
I think that's pretty much what I have, Brady. I really want to thank you for coming in, but I wanted one final question. What's your best piece of dad advice?
My best piece of dad advice?
Yeah.
Be present.
Okay.
My oldest is 11. My youngest of 4 is 6. I learned in the first couple of years when the first 2 were young, when I was traveling from state to state every day.
Sure.
And I was out the door before they woke up in the morning and I was home late at night. And I was on a lot of conventions and I was on a lot of overnight trips that the time went so quickly that you never get it back. So my biggest piece of dad advice is when your children are young, especially, you have a short window and it goes fast, just like everyone knows. You have a short window to influence them, to be there for them, to help them grow into amazing humans, and it goes fast. So as much time as you can spend with them, and while you're with them, be present, look them in the eyes. They don't need a whole lot of time, I've learned, and some studies will say they need 10 minutes a day minimum, but they just need to know that you're there for them. And that's the biggest thing. And lead by example. They watch everything that you do. So even if you're there and you say the right things, they're going to see your work ethic. They're going to see whether you care about your health and fitness. They're going to see how you treat their mom. They're going to see how you treat your parents and other people around you. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that lead by example, be there with them because it goes fast. And before you know it, that window is closed.
Powerful. Thank you, Brady.
Yes, my pleasure, Brian. Thank you.